What do skateboarding and math have in common? More than you may think. The first time you try to do a kickflip, you're probably not going to land it. It takes time, effort, and practice before you land your first kickflip. The same thing goes for math. The first time you try solving a new kind of equation in math class, you might have a hard time getting it. During the pandemic, we saw failing grades and less engagement. Teachers and staff are taking a closer look at why this happened, and many are saying that traditional grading practices may be part of the problem. In the traditional system, if a student does poorly on an assignment they just learned, they get an F in the grade book. Why is this?
Michael Phelps is one of the most decorated Olympians ever. He holds the record for the most gold medals with 23. He won 8 gold medals in one Olympics, setting the record for the most first-place finishes at a single Olympic Games. But when we talk about Michael Phelps, we don't talk about the losses that he experienced. We don't think about all the hours of practice he put into his craft, all the work leading up to his success. The same concept can be applied to grading a student.
If you can land a kickflip, you can say you landed a kickflip. No one's going to say, you landed a kickflip, but it took you 500 tries, and you had, it took you 6 months or whatever. It doesn't go into that conversation. So starting with the idea that every kickflip that you miss, or every time that you mess up or break a string or whatever, those are just getting you to where you want to go.
So once you plug in your air, you can turn on your bottle, which is nitrogen.
Students are expected to start new skills as beginners, but with specific feedback and practice, most are able to leave his class proficient. Mr. Codice uses a skills-based approach in his instruction and grading practices to ensure that students are able to reach proficiency by breaking down the standards by skill.
You don't sign up for the X Games 3 days after skating for the first time and receive a score on how you did. Why should we expect students to be proficient at a skill right after they learned it? Changing the approach will allow students to focus on learning a skill rather than focusing on the grade they are going to receive.
It's brought a lot more focus. We don't have the questions, how do I get my grade up? Can I do any extra credit? Because that's not part of it. It's knowing the standards. How can I learn the standard more deeply? For each standard, there's a rubric, and they know that for each standard what their expectation is.
So breaking it down really helps me understand what they need to know, and it helps me teach them what they want to learn.
It deepens their understanding of different concepts, different areas of the content levels.
Learning about the success criteria was really helpful because those are things that I can actually watch them do that tells me that they're hitting that mastery.
Failing, and maybe getting a C's, and then by the time we get to the actual summative assessment at the end, they've got an A. They learned it. So all that stuff was up to learning, and I will go back and exempt that work so it doesn't count against their grade, because in the end, they showed they learned it. So it is a process, it's a building process, and those building blocks shouldn't count against them if they got lower than the grade at the end. This is practice, and if I don't do it right, that's okay, because I'm going to practice some more, and I'm going to practice some more, and I'm going to do better in the end, and that practice isn't going to hurt me.
In a traditional grading system, your grades don't tell you what you know and what you don't know in relation to the standards. This way of grading introduces accountability that allows students to focus on the skills they don't know.
Some teachers have shared with me that the kids are being more accountable for their learning. They are asking questions. They know that the teachers are very clear with the standards and what success criteria is expected of them. So the kids are trying to meet all of those success criteria.
They want to master it. They want to know how they're getting to the next step. And if they're lacking these other skills, they want to know how to get to that next step. And I haven't had that before. I haven't had students be accountable for their learning. And now breaking it down even further, now I'm able to see, and the students are able to see, like, okay, I couldn't get this because I didn't understand this. That's where they're taking that accountability.
Well, now the student is able to fix that one standard, whereas before it'd be like, I gotta be whatever, I'm fine.
When you begin to learn a trick, you're going to fail a bunch, right? You might record a video of yourself to watch to see what you're doing right and what you need to adjust. All of this is part of the process.
I'm going to go figure out what's wrong and then run back to the board and check it. And they don't expect that to go in the grade book. They don't expect that. They expect that that's teaching them so that they will be able to understand the standard and get that intermediate or advanced level on it. So this is a perfect page on the 8.G.B.7 standard.
Ms. Park not only practices this way of grading in her classroom at Ortiz, she also shows other teachers how to leverage the same strategies in their classrooms.
It's been a shift in the learning. It's been, the whole thing is not about I got an F, it's about I learned this.
Since we started this, we decided to not only do it in isolation because we're a really small school, we combined with Chaparral and Nava. And it allows for our teachers that are in silos, like my third grade teacher, I only have one. And at the other small schools, they're in the same position. So it allows for collaboration within the schools. Our teachers are really excited about working together and getting ideas from one another and just working through the 7-step cycle. I think that teachers have always had to put the standards like on their lesson plans, and they felt like they knew their standards. But with this process that we've been doing, I think they feel like they understand them even better. I've had some of my teachers tell me that they feel like, my goodness, I thought I knew everything. I thought I knew my standards, but breaking them down, it's holding me more accountable and allowing me to teach my kids to be more accountable.
The classroom is a place to learn and practice real-world skills. Students are able to focus on their learning rather than grades and are able to perform at a higher level than before.
The standards are very big and heavy, and there's a lot of parts to them.
The students always know what we're working on, what I'm assessing them on. It's not about just showing up to work, it's about doing specific skills at a high level.
Students are able to focus on learning without the fear of failure to get there.
By the time you learn that skill, you expect to be at the top because you're going to learn it and Mr. Codice is going to teach you.
Seeing myself like by 1 to 3 and going up makes me feel like I'm doing something good and like I'm learning.
With a standards-based approach, teachers see grading as an integral part of the learning process and a way for students to better understand their own learning in the classroom and throughout their lives.
And that's the mindset that we have, and the idea that you're always practicing, you're always getting better. So nothing is wasted and everything is a chance to learn and grow.